Everyone still looks uncomfortable.
Perhaps they're all remembered that old saying, power corrupts.
Hello and welcome to Second Officer Slog. I'm your host, M. With me is regular co-host Jackson.
Hello, welcome to Star Trek.
This is the 7th episode of Star Trek. That's not true. We're actually watching like the 8th or 12th, something like that. But this is the 7th episode of this podcast, which is good enough for you.
And it's good enough for me. Wait, they're both me.
No, I was referring to the audience, not you.
Okay. All right,
Yep.
Fine. Been a bit of a long day and a bit of a long week.
How's Star Trek going?
Terrible. I hate it. That's not
We
true.
are 2 weeks away from Discovery.
I want to get Enterprise Season 2 done before then. That's my only goal. I'd like to watch a bunch of Enterprise in the next few weeks. But
We are like 4 hours away from the premiere of Orville.
you going to edit in some, crickets?
Absolutely not. You're editing this one.
Then maybe. You're going to watch Orville.
I am committed to watch at least maybe 2 episodes.
You're going to watch Orville until we record a podcast.
What do you mean?
That's 4 episodes of Orville, and then you will check in.
Oh, no, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if I watch 2 episodes and they're both terrible, then I will stop. If it's tolerable, I will probably continue.
How low is the tolerable bar?
If they are better or equal to the book we are talking about today, I will continue to watch them.
Okay, the book we read today is one of the worst books I have ever read in my life. So when I said how low is the tolerable bar, that's low.
It's low. How low can you go? Lower than this, apparently.
Oh. I almost said Todd McFarlane.
It's a different. If I would 100% be here for Todd McFarlane's Star Trek.
Todd McFarlane's fake Star Trek.
Yes. God.
Oh. Yes, no, you're right. You're right. Look, we've got comics to read at some point.
Yeah,
We don't know
I know.
how ridiculous they could be.
I don't think Todd McFarlane's probably ever made a Star Trek comic, but
I don't think
know.
he has either, but I'm sure there's at least one that could be described as Todd McFarlane-esque.
So, since with that out of the way, we're going to cover today 2 episodes and the book. Of course, the book is deep in the DS9 relaunch, so only listen to these first 2 episodes if you don't want DS9 spoilers. But the episodes are probably going to take up a good chunk because the book is bad and we'd rather talk about the episodes. The episodes are The Conscience of a King from the original series, Friday's Child from the original series, and the book will be This Gray Spirit, which is from the DS9 relaunch. We'll cover those in the respective segments. If you are not following us through to the end of this podcast and are bowing out in the second half, the episodes for next month are Journey to Babel, the original series, Season 2, Episode 15, and Sarek, TNG, Season 3, Episode 23. We're going to get a double dose of Sarek. It's going to be good.
It's Sarek time.
Yep. It's like Mario time, but
It's
way
just
more
like
logical.
Mario time.
Sarek and Mario might as well be the same person.
Thank you
Sarek
so
also
much.
is not a plumber. This is for nobody. We need to move on to the next segment.
Much like Sarek, Mario keeps dating human women.
We're done. Next segment, music.
The skies are green and glowing where my heart is, where my heart is, where the scented Luna flower is going, somewhere beyond the stars, beyond the is just another journey. Tomorrow, a stop along the way.
Our first episode this month is The Conscience of a King. Of the King. Sorry, not a king.
No.
Definite articles. That's what those are called, right?
Yeah.
I used to be an English major.
Yes, the is the definite article.
Yes. This is the original series, Season 1, Episode 12. This first aired in December of 1966. This episode takes place in the year 2266, unsurprisingly. We open on a performance on the planet Q of the Caridian. It's just the Caridian company, like Shakespeare company, right? You
I mean,
know.
it's not their planet, but
Yes,
the Caridian
but they're
company,
performing. Yeah, the Caridian company is performing Hamlet, and it's very dramatic.
They're performing Macbeth.
Macbeth. Oh, right, Hamlet's after that. Sorry, my
Yes.
apologies. And Kirk is there watching with his friend Dr. Thomas Layton, and Dr. Tom has a suspicion that Anton Caridian, the leader of this company, is actually Kodos the Executioner, who notoriously, as we find out, seized control of Earth Colony Tarsus 4 back when Kirk and Dr. Tom and a bunch of other people were younger and executed half of the population during like a food shortage because of a virus. And Kirk survived and Layton survived, and they're like, oh, he escaped because the body was found, but it was never positively identified, and everyone just assumed it was Kodos, and maybe he escaped as this actor. And Kirk's like, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll look into it. And then Tom shows up dead, and Kirk's like, this is very suspicious. Meanwhile, Kirk is hot for Kodos's daughter, or sorry, Anton Caridian's daughter.
Please,
Lenore.
tension in the summary, please.
And they just make eyes at each other while Kirk is investigating her father by being like an actual like eugenicist war criminal, and that conflict of interest is real, and he's very testy about it. And Spock is like, Captain's testy about something and told me not to investigate this. What if I investigate this? And turns out that everyone who could have positively identified Kodos has been murdered, except for Lieutenant Kevin Riley and James T. Kirk. Meanwhile,
Lieutenant Kevin Riley also serves aboard the Enterprise.
Yes. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Riley is like, oh, we need to put him in engineering where like he can be like out of the way and maybe no one will notice. Lieutenant Kevin Riley gets himself poisoned. It's chocolate milk sprayed with Windex as he is listening to Lieutenant Uhura perform a song. We'll get there. But anyway, he survives, thankfully, due to the administrations of Dr. McCoy. Spock and McCoy confront Kirk, and then Kirk is threatened with execution or an assassination attempt, blah, blah, blah. He confronts Kodos. Kodos is like, maybe I'm Kodos, maybe I'm not. They do a voice print thing. There's a lot of talk about regret and memory. And then during a performance of... this one's Hamlet, right? This time?
This final one is Hamlet, yes.
Yes, during a performance of Hamlet that the Caridian players are giving aboard the ship as a payment for the Enterprise ferrying them around. Lieutenant Riley, who had heard Dr. McCoy expounding the plot of this episode into a microphone, grabs a phaser and tries to kill Caridian / Kodos, whatever. And Kirk stops him, and then in the brouhaha that entails, it is revealed that actually... Caridian is not trying to kill everyone who's ever seen him. It's his daughter Lenore, who has been trying to protect her father because he is the greatest man who's ever lived, and he will perform around the galaxy, and every star will shine bright with the performance of the Caridian players. And then she tries to shoot Kirk, and he jumps in front of it and gets shot and dies, and she's all messed up about it. And that's kind of the end.
The end, question mark? I don't think we said this episode is written by Barry Trivers.
Oh,
and
right.
directed by
Sorry, that's on
Gernot
me.
Oswald.
Yes. My apologies.
That's okay.
Yeah. This episode is like really dramatic and arch, and like it's all played very straight, but because it is kind of the most like 60s sci-fi teleplay, I thought this episode was hilarious.
So the two episodes we have are both hilarious. The other one more intentionally so. This one is less knowing. They're both very, very funny. I didn't really like this episode very much, but it was still mostly enjoyable. of the episodes we have chosen this far, these are the two most peak Star Trek, which we'll get into what we mean through these discussions, because oh my god, does a lot of nonsense happen.
Jackson,
Yes,
this is
yes.
Ronald D. Moore's favorite episode of the original series.
Okay, that's fine, Ronald D. Moore. That seems like a very Ronald D. Moore opinion.
I actually want to read this quote because I think it's actually really interesting, because if you watch this episode and you weren't us and just laughed at how goofy it is a lot of the time, and you read it the way Ronald D. Moore did, it actually does sound a lot of like the things we like about Deep Space Nine, and I think it's
Yes.
like worth reading because it's a good. It's from an AOL chat in 1997. Thank you, Memory Alpha, for preserving the dumbest things on Earth.
Ronald D. Moore did regular AOL chats.
Yeah, no, I know.
Do you wanna read the question?
AOL chats were like a real thing, but when you think about it in 2017, it's ludicrous. Also, this
AOL
quote is 20
keyboard.
years old.
Oh, fuck off. AOL keyword. Read the quote. I think it's important to take it out.
I liked the backstory of Kirk as a young man caught up in a revolution and the nightmarish slaughter by Governor Kodos. I liked the Shakespearean overtones to the episode as well as the use of the plays themselves, and I absolutely loved Kirk in this episode. A troubled man haunted by the shadows of the past, a man willing to lure Caridian to his ship under false pretenses, willing to do one of his more cold-blooded seductions on Lenore, willing to fight with his two closest friends and risk his entire command in the name of justice. Or was it vengeance? Kirk's aware of his own lack of objectivity, his own flaws to be in this hunt for a killer, but he cannot push the burden away and refuses to pull back from his quest to track down Kodos no matter what the cost. It also has some of my favorite lines in TOS. The scene with Spock and McCoy in Kirk's quarters is one of the series' highlights. The brooding tone and the morally ambiguous nature of the drama fascinated me and definitely influenced my thinking as to what Trek could and should be all about.
Yep. You can tell because it's very DS9 in that way. Like, we watched Duet a few weeks ago. It was one of our early episodes that we watched, and that's almost like a redo of this, of someone who has been in an awful situation finds the person responsible and basically spends the entire episode waffling as to whether or not it's actually them, even though it's clearly them. Even though in Duet it goes like the twist the other way. But in this one, it's just clearly, obviously them.
Yep. The stuff that he's talking about Spock and McCoy is actually some of my favorite stuff. The stuff that I think is most successful in this episode, because Kirk is clearly doing shady stuff because the players were not supposed to be brought on the ship, and he arranged for their original transport to be canceled because he's conducting his investigation. And then when Spock questions about it, he's very shady about dodging it all. And so Spock's like, I'm going to take up this research on my own. And then he tries to talk to McCoy about it, and McCoy is like literally in sick bay, pounding back drinks, being like, Spock, join me. Don't think about this. The captain's going to do what the captain's going to do, and it's not our place to question it. And Spock's like, no, I think it is my place actually to question what the captain's doing when it is like against orders and against common sense. And they all basically get in a big fight about it. And so much of the way that like Star Trek can be easily dismissed by people who like are more like weaned on modern television is like, oh, everyone just gets along and there's no interpersonal conflict. This is like this is a weirdly like off-model version of Star Trek where everyone just kind of like snipes at each other and doesn't trust each other in a way that I find really strange. Like, I know this is early in the original series, but this doesn't read like how I read Star Trek. This is like how I read Enterprise.
Yes, for sure. It's strange because in any other show, in Star Trek, or I guess not Enterprise, but in most other shows, like in TNG, if the same plot happened, if suddenly Picard brought like a weird group of actors aboard a ship and started demoting people and didn't tell anyone why, everyone would go, oh, he's doing a thing, it's fine. Well, I don't know what it is, but he's doing a thing. He's clearly doing a thing. Whereas Spock is like actually worried that Kirk could be making really bad decisions in a way that just the audience would never buy, because there's never you don't do that to your main characters. It's fine. Like, everyone knows it'll be fine. The drama comes from other places.
Yep. Yeah. And also Ronald D. Moore being like, this was like the most dramatic, most beautiful like sequence of this show is punctuated by the fact that this scene actually ends with them in Kirk's room with a phaser shoved in a weird drawer that's like at the top of his door frame, and then Kirk yelling for double red alert, which is not a real thing.
And the scene begins, or this section of the scene begins with Kirk like hearing the phaser be overloaded and goes, oh shit, things are about to kick off. And behind him, Spock like framed in an almost deliberate comedy way, pulling out drawers and throwing clothes on the floor.
Yeah.
While Kirk delivers his like double red alert monologue.
I feel like the first place I would look is the weird compartment above the door that holds nothing other than a phaser.
Yes, and where it eventually is just in a phaser-sized compartment.
That's apparently has no other use. It's like really hard to reach. Like, why would you even put a drawer there?
I don't understand. And then he like throws it in
a garbage chute.
Yeah, in a garbage chute, which I assume throws it out to space and they just shake with the force. It's not like it explodes in the ship.
Yeah, but like it's all very like offhanded, silly in a way that Star Trek like it doesn't. That's not what happened. There's no garbage chutes. There's jettison. You put your like waste in the chute and then it falls out into space because that tube goes to space. That's not how anything works.
It's very silly.
It's very dumb, but it's kind of like par for the course. This episode is like very arch. Like Kirk like coming on to this lady as he's like investigating her father and playing it very straight and like, oh, I'm actually here for you. And then they're like walking in the observation lounge, like observation deck at night, and like the lights are dimmed and she's like, oh, this ship, powerful and throbbing. And it's just the most everything.
She does say, how does it feel to be in command of this powerful and throbbing ship? What would you do with all that power? And he's like, oh, well, not really that much, actually. You know.
But then she also, like once she realizes that he's investigating her father for being Kodos, she wheels on him and is like, you're trying to bring this man to justice for killing 4,000 people. That's not very human of you. As if the compassionate thing is just let him go.
Well, there's a lot of this in this episode, and we're going to talk about this in the book. And it's one of my frustrations with not just Star Trek, but a lot of, like, well-meaning sci-fi written by, generally well-meaning people that are usually too rich to like understand anything about like how actual morality works. There's a lot of the posturing about, oh, is this justice or is this revenge? Like there's a scene where like McCoy goes, and if this is Kodos, like, and you like kill him, that's not going to bring the people back. And I'm like, no, it's not. But he killed 4,000 people, McCoy. He killed 4,000 people.
Yeah. I mean, so the argument is that there was like the actual thing was like the food shortage was real, and he did like decide, oh, I need to kill half the colonists to let the other half live on what we have left. And he just did that. The thing that happened is that like shortly after that, like supply ships that weren't supposed to get there in time got there faster than they were supposed to, and they were resupplied. And so he went down as like this monster who slaughtered half the colonists, and not like, he's like, if that hadn't happened, I would be considered a hero because I saved half the colonists instead of everyone dying. But this episode doesn't really grapple with that. It just grapples with the fact that, oh, he killed all these people and he has to pay, but does Kirk want him to pay too much?
Yeah, like the morality questions, like even that, oh, the ships came in and I would have been a hero otherwise, it's like a kind of dumb morality idea. Like,
yeah, but like by centering but centering Kirk's decision as like the actual like moral center of this episode really misses all of the nuance of even that discussion, which isn't like particularly nuanced, but it's better than this. Because
the like episode climaxes with Kevin Riley, my Star Trek character man, Kevin. I don't know why that's not very Star Trek
I like that he is like the most Archie Comics looking 60s motherfucker in the entire world.
Oh, yes, no, with his chocolate milkshake.
Yep. Continue what you want to say, and then we'll talk about the chocolate milk. Cause...
Like Star Trek's so dumb. So the actual climax, one of the climaxes is he comes up and is like, I have to murder him because he murdered my like mother and my father like in front of me. He is one of the most evil people, and he has been like ensuring that he can't be found. He has to die. And then Kirk's like, no, what would this make you? You have to put the gun down. That is the right thing to do. And I'm like, oh, piss off. He killed 4,000 people. It's fine.
But also, like, if he had murdered Kodos and it like left Kirk off the hook for like, oh, this kid acted rashly, so Kirk didn't have to. Like, I don't like how that decenters like Kirk's decision is irrelevant because another person took the action. Like, I think that's
That still
bad writing
happens.
also. I guess it does, but in a different, like, more arch way that is like a different track on everything.
Yeah, like all of the ways the climax folds in itself are super 60s. Like you said, it was super Twilight Zone-y.
Yep.
And you're totally right. And not in ways that, like, I'm being too mean about this episode because it is, he does, his Febreze poisons his chocolate milk. Like, it's pretty amazing.
So, okay, we're just going to talk about this. So, in this sequence, like, Riley's moved from communications engineering to, like, basically get him out of the way because Kirk doesn't tell anyone that his life might be in danger, but realizes that Riley's life might be in danger. So, he sends him to engineering where it's just dark and sad and empty. And so, he's sitting there, like, tending this station that no one's at because this Enterprise is, like, really, like, I guess maybe it's just the original series, but this ship feels empty a lot of the time in a way that TNG never does.
Not enough extras budget.
Yeah. Anyway, he's sitting there and he's like in communication with the lounge, the cafeteria. I don't know exactly. It's like a place where people are playing 3D chess and 3D like Connect 4. And Uhura's sitting there with a harp and he's like, "Oh, Lieutenant Uhura, please play me a song. I'm so sad down here." And so she plays this song called Beyond Antares, which is written by Wilbur Hatch, lyrics by Gene L. Kuhn, and is played by, like, the song is actually sung by Nichelle Nichols, and it has, like, all this accompaniment, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's this ridiculous love song played on, quote-unquote, a Vulcan harp, which is a harp, a piano, and a guitar, and is the sappiest, 60th bullshit sci-fi thing I've ever seen in Star Trek.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's look up Beyond Antares or look up Uhura's song. You'd probably get it from that and listen to it. It feels like it comes from like a decade before this show to me.
Yeah, it's very silly.
Anyway, while he's listening to that and like making love eyes at nobody in particular, a shadow comes from behind and sprays Windex into his chocolate milk because beside him is like his dinner, which in the world of Star Trek is probably nutritious, but looks like a glass of chocolate milk and a plate full of now and laters. Because every bit of food is just a weird, like, primary colored cube.
It's such a different, like, future version, because by the time TNG happened, it's just, oh, we have replicators, and you just say nice food, and then nice food arrives.
Yeah,
But
they always
instead
have, like,
here-
the most, like, specific to their culture and sensibility type of food. Like, everyone in Star Trek, everyone in TNG and DS9's, like, food choice is, like, in the character Bible of they order this kind of food because they're this kind of character.
Yep. It's like, yeah, there's probably something super, you know, fucking O'Brien orders a Guinness from the replicator. Like,
Yeah. There's
It's done.
literally an episode about how Keiko makes, like, health, like, microbiotic health food and he's grumpy about it.
oh, God, I was saying that as a hilarious exaggeration.
No, it's not that. Because he tries to get her to have haggis. I think that happens in TNG.
He's Irish.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I forgot about the haggis plotline.
But then he drinks the Windex milk and he drops it. And it is canonically some sort of milk because when they detect the poison, it's like, oh, they use it because it looks like milk. It would have blended right into his chocolate milk.
Well, it's even dumber than that because they're like, oh, this is a substance found here. It's a milky substance that could have ended up in that accidentally. We don't know if this was actually a attempt on his life. And there's like, it's obvious from minute one that this guy is Kodos, that everything has actually happened how everyone thinks it has. And Spock's the only one who like knows that. Apparently everyone else is like, oh, it's like Hot Fuzz. It basically becomes Hot Fuzz as they go like, what makes you think it was murder? And Spock is like, because it was. Am I going insane here, Captain?
It's really weird because when Kirk confronts Kodos about it, the reaction to Kodos is like, that he has to all this, it's weird because it's played like in a way where you could read it in that maybe he doesn't remember or maybe he is traumatized and blocked it out as much as he recognizes it as a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the actor is like the most like 30s, 40s theatrical actor, so he is just overacting the hell out of every scene.
Oh, it's a lot.
And it's not bad. It's just weird in the like it is overpowering to a show like Star Trek.
I mean, like, there are times when Star Trek gets ridiculous and theatrical, and I'm very on board.
Yep.
I really liked that episode with the Romulans, the Balance of Terror,
Yeah.
that we watched the other time, which is another very, a dramatic and arch original series show. But I like that one a lot. This one I liked a bit less.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is not like as great of an episode.
Oh.
Yeah, the weird off-model Kirk and Spock are the things that really... Like, McCoy is just kind of McCoy because he can be surly in any version of this show. But those two being the way they are in this episode, it almost feels... So the thing, when I watch this, the Kirk and Spock depicted here remind me a lot of the Mirror Universe versions of those characters.
Yes.
And it's really strange. Like... This is because I've always read Mirror Universe because of the way it's depicted in later Star Trek as like this wild cartoon inversion, evil version of these characters. But if you look at this episode and you look at Mirror Mirror, they're not that different.
No, like the universe is different, but the characters are basically pretty similar.
And what that says about the Mirror Universe doesn't really gel with the rest of Star Trek, but it is really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. 60 Star Trek is weird. I'm glad that we're going back and discovering it ourselves.
Yep. Two trivia notes, if you also don't read Memory Alpha about all these episodes, but Kodos, of course, is one half of the aliens Kodos and Kang, both named after Star Trek. They're Simpsons aliens. You know the ones. And also, this is the first episode that has the proper computer voice for the Enterprise.
It's true. Finally.
Yeah. Go figure.
Took him a while. It's also like the last episode that what's her name?
Yeoman Rand was in.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't really show
Grace Lee Whitney. Yeah.
Grace Lee
she
Whitney,
was
yes.
she was fired for alcoholism, but also is it her that there's like the sexual abuse allegations?
I don't know.
Or is it
There's
someone else? I don't, so there's a thing we want to get into someday where we can do more research, but there's definitely some shady shit that happened on this like set of Star Trek. Specifically about Gene Roddenberry and I think one of the other producers.
Turns out that the men running a television show in the 60s were fucking monsters.
Yeah. Yep. We don't really like get into it every episode, but also fuck Gene Roddenberry. He seems like probably a bad guy.
He does, and also he ruined Star Trek.
Yeah, also he doesn't know what's good about Star Trek. That's the thing. If we ever cover a lot of early TNG, we will probably complain a lot about Roddenberryisms.
I mean, we didn't bring him up in Haven, but I can lay it at his feet.
Yep. No, that's fair. God. Jackson, do you want to cover our next episode?
I am so excited to talk about Friday's Child. Okay. So, Friday's Child is episode 3 of season 2 of the original series. It aired the 1st of December 1967, which means it takes place in 2267. Written by D.C. Fontana and directed by Joseph Pevney, who I think both of those have made appearances on this show before.
Oh, D.C. Fontana is like she's like one of the most prolific Star Trek writers.
Yeah. It's, and I'm fairly sure we've watched a Pevney directed episode.
Yeah.
I recognize that name.
Jackson, what happens in this episode?
So it starts like weirdly in media res for Star Trek of them mid-meeting as Bones is explaining the violent but respectful society of Capella 4 with the Capellans, who are discovered that this planet that they are on has a bunch of rare metals that are used in mining. So the Federation have dispatched...
It is specifically the rare mineral topoline, which is interesting only in that it does not sound like a Star Trek thing at all.
It really doesn't. You're right. So they dispatch the Enterprise to go and secure the mining rights, and Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and some guy, Lieutenant Grant.
I was watching this with my partner Desi. She's like, "Oh, that guy is new. I wonder what's going to happen to him." Like fully knowing, but not knowing how quickly he would instantly get owned.
Yes, they beam down to the surface, and then they discover that on the surface there is a Klingon already there. They had not detected a Klingon ship, but a Klingon is on the surface of Capella 4. And so
Grant just grabs his phaser. He's like, "A Klingon!" and grabs his phaser, which is a mistake on Capella.
Because the Klingon just immediately throws a knife at him.
No, it's not the Klingon. It's one of the Capellans, because it's like an affront to their like hospitality.
Oh, right. Yes.
Just throws a dagger directly into his chest.
They have their specific like dagger situation.
Yep.
And it's also a very weird opening segment because there's no captain's log. The captain's log comes after the title card. You don't actually know any of the stuff about Topoline yet.
Yep.
So they just kind of beam down out of nowhere, and this red shirt gets fucking owned. And then the episode... So the episode starts, they negotiate for the mining rights between the Klingon and the Federation. They're like, oh, you can't trust the Klingon. The Klingon is one of conquering. Like, yes, we do not agree with your violent culture, but we will not interfere with it. We will not, like, turn you into our empire. We will stay away. That is the Federation's way. And they, like, have a little discussion about this. But then the Tia, who is called Aka, is challenged by the other Capellan called Marb or Maab. And Aka dies, and so Marb becomes the new tier and is now in command of the Capellans. Aka's wife has to kill herself and her child, as according to some unknown law of the Capellans, but Kirk stops her because, you know, he cannot allow a woman so beautiful to die because he is Kirk. And so what happens is, in the middle of the night, all four of these people, Spock, Kirk, McCoy, and this woman...
Her name, by the way, is Elaine. Like, it's Ellen, but the E is doubled because they always have doubled...
Fucking Star Trek. Oh my god. They escape and just run off into the mountains. And the rest of the episode is the Capellans kind of following them around as Bones begins to bond with her, the details of which we will get into later. Meanwhile, up in space, Commander of the Enterprise...
Up in space, nothing happens.
No, something does happen. Commander of the Enterprise falls to Scotty, which is weird. I feel like that's not the way it would have gone, but then I forget that TOS is a much lighter show in terms of cast than... TNG. I would have assumed that, like, Sulu would have got it before Scotty, but I forget that this is before
before all
George
of that
Takei
was relevant. Yes. Like, I mean, he was there, but, like, yeah, I feel like if that show had happened maybe in the third season, it probably would have fallen to Sulu.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just mean that, like, George Takei being, like, of the status he is and, like, as an actor is why he got his own shit by the end of the movies. Like, that is a movie politics thing, not a character thing.
Yep.
Anyway, Scotty's in charge of the Enterprise and is, like, being very ridiculous about it. And so there's another ship that calls for a distress call, so they have to go deal with it. But it turns out there's no ship there, and actually it's a Klingon trap. And then they run into the Klingons, and will they be able to get back in time? As they, like, stare down the Klingons, and Scotty's like, we're going to head straight for them. Red alert, it's time to go. And we cut back to Capella, where Kirk and Spock have fashioned bows and arrows, and they talk about how these... it turns out the Capellans have not developed bows and arrows.
So they haven't developed bows and arrows, but they have throwing daggers that they've used to great effect already. Like, it's not like they don't have long-range weapons.
No, they just don't understand how to tie a string to a thing.
We'll get to it.
And so they hold themselves up ready as in a cave, McCoy is with... new friend, Ellen, Jesus Christ. And the baby is born in the cave. Ellen runs away, leaving the baby with McCoy, running back to Marb. And saying that, like, I must go die in my room now, it is our way. Marb turns to her and goes, no longer do you have to. I take your burden, your life, my life is now forfeit instead. In the ensuing conflict, as they reveal themselves, the Klingon, like, I forget the way of events, but basically it becomes a three-way standoff between the Capellans, the Klingon, and Spock and Kirk. And so Marb goes up to the Klingon and goes, put down your disruptor, and, like, basically arms out, let us fight as men. The Klingon instantly shoots him with the disruptor and vaporizes him.
Yep. And then the Capellans are like, that's not honorable, and throw daggers at him until he dies.
Because although he has way better weapons, only one Klingon came down to the surface, which, as we all know, rookie mistake.
Yeah,
Idiot
no.
move. He is his own red shirt and gets promptly owned. At this exact convenient moment, Scotty shows up with a bunch of security officers and
They literally like round a rock, like, hey, we're here, the cavalry.
and the day is saved, ? Anyway, none of that really matters. Cut to the ship. The mining rights are secured.
Yes, because the baby has become high tier again. The baby is named Leonard James Akar. If you listen to this podcast before, that baby grows up to be Admiral Akar, who's been menacing the books of DS9. Not really menacing, but you know. But he is being looked after by Ella N, who's like the steward of these Capellans while he grows up. And then they all have a laugh about how the fact he's named Leonard James after, McCoy and Kirk.
And McCoy and Kirk are just having a right-on laugh about it, and Spock's like, you're going to be insufferable for the next month.
They're like, who knows? Maybe the baby will go down in history. Little did they know he would be a major character in Star Trek.
Yes. No way for them to know. This episode is nonsense. It's beautiful. I love it so fucking much. Oh my god.
So one thing, Ella N is played by Julie Newmar, who is most famous for playing, or one of the actresses to play Catwoman on Batman the Original Series.
Yes.
She's great here. Please tell me, Jackson, about how Dr. McCoy endears himself to Ella N while she's pregnant and like, I'm suffering in the wilderness.
So we got introduced to Ella N by Kirk saving her life, and then Ella N is like, he has touched me. I have a right to see him killed. And Kirk just responds with an amazing face like, oh, sorry about that. Anyway, they run off together, but she still is like, I do not trust any of you. You are all evil, and I will not let any of you touch me. And so McCoy's like, no, I need to make sure the baby's okay. I need to make sure the baby's going to be fine. Let me, like, I'm not trying to do anything. And he's like trying to touch the baby. And every time he tries to touch the baby, tries to touch like her stomach, she gives him a movie slap. And it's all very funny. Movie slap. Gives him 2 big slaps. And he just looks at her and immediately smacks her around the face. And then she loves him after that. She's like, oh, you can tell my baby is going to only be like, is coming soon? No one I know, no even woman has such a powerful touch. Only he may touch me. The child is yours. As she's giving birth, he's like, no, the child does not belong to the tier. You must think of the child as your own. Break yourself. Like, because it tries to have like a feminist message from the man who smacked her around the face. And he's like, no, think to yourself, the child is mine. The child is mine. And she goes, yes, the child is yours, McCoy.
The 60s were a rough time for depictions of women.
Oh my god, it's so dumb. It's not good. I'm only able to laugh about it and have a great time with it in the fact that it is from the 60s.
Yes.
Like, if this had come even like a decade later, I would be horrified. And I still am, but God.
An interesting note is apparently in the original script, Fontana wanted Ella in to sacrifice the child, like be like, that child's not mine, and then kill it. And Gene Roddenberry was like, no, you can't do this. This is not acceptable.
I like the fact that Fontana was writing a very serious episode of Star Trek.
About giant people in like weird like fur bras. Because what they wear is like a unitard that covers their head and everything, but then they have like, they're like a tribal people who live in tents, so they have weird furs, but clearly they don't have enough fur, so they're just like fur bras on everybody.
Yeah, everyone looks kind of like shit Q, but before anyone knew what Q was.
Oh, it's so bad. And they have these very like, the like unitard covers their whole head except for their face, and the giant ponytail that comes out of every one of their heads that is, I assume it's their hair, but it's never clear because you never see one without the hood, but is like unwieldy to the point where like it's at the square top of their head and is just swinging around, like hitting some of the actors in the face as they're trying to move and do stuff.
And their dialogue is all super, super ridiculous as they're like, it might amuse me. I am Tyr, and I must not trade with you.
Yeah, it's like somewhere between it's like somewhere between like the stereotypical Mongolian horde and like Roman legions.
Yep.
It is peak Star Trek race. It's the dumbest thing.
I love everything.
So what happened? So the plot actually is at this point that they steal this pregnant lady, and it becomes like, I know that like the whole thing with Gene Roddenberry is he's like, I wanted to make like what's it called, Wagon Train, right?
Yes,
I want to make like Wagon
Stars.
Train in space. And what they basically do is they create an ambush at the end of like a box canyon. They're like, we're just going to hole up here. And when the posse comes, we're going to get them with these bows and arrows and we're going to drop rocks on them. And it is the most like Western setup to everything. Like this is just an episode of a Western that happens to take place in space.
Yes, it's like the episode of a Western, but instead of knocking rocks on them, they aim their communicators at each other.
So what happens is they're like, we need to find weapons, and then it cuts to later, and they've just fashioned actual functioning bows and arrows, which is hilarious.
No, it doesn't just cut to it. It doesn't just cut to it. It has a perfectly directed camera shot of Kirk saying, "We need to find some weapons," and then it pans out to reveal the bows and arrows behind.
Yep. And then they're like, Kirk, I think it's Kirk that's like, we need to like, maybe we can sync up our communicators to create like a sonic pulse that will drop rocks on them. And Spock's like, that is a very low chance of working, Captain. And Kirk's like, well, if you don't think it's gonna actually do anything. And Spock's like, I did not say that, Captain. And that exact construction where like Kirk like dares someone, he's like, well, if you don't think it's gonna work, and then they're like, I have to prove myself right to the captain, happens twice in this episode, because it happens with McCoy later too.
That scene is my favorite scene in the episode, not even for the lines, but for after he says, I didn't say that. Both Spock and Kirk, as one, give a smirk and flip open their communicators.
No, it is super arch. And then, like, as they're prepping for like the ambush, there's this actually amazing shot of Kirk and Spock on the rocks. Like,
yes.
It's just like a big wide environment shot, and one of them is like standing in the foreground, and one of them is like crouched in the background, and it looks beautiful. Like it's like actually a stunning shot in Star Trek, and it's so weird in the middle of this cartoon nonsense.
It's so good.
And then the Capellans show up and they fire bows and arrows, and these like literally sharpened sticks that they're using for arrows just are like ruinous. Like it's just arrows hitting, like it hits a guy in the knee, and it's the most like Skyrim joke. The guy falls over clutching his leg. It's so dumb.
If you want to understand like why Star Trek is good, watch DS9, watch watch the good Star Trek, and you'll see what it can be. If you want to understand why Star Trek is great,
if you want to understand why like for 20 years people clamored over old tapes and syndication of Star Trek until they made a new one, this is a good reason.
It is episodes like this that is why Star Trek is mocked a lot, but also why you can't actually like take it down in the way that you can. I'm trying to think of a more self-serious, easily mockable series. Like I would say Star Wars, I guess, but Star Wars has got its own kind of dumbness.
Yep.
But like, it is too honest about its stupidity for like any kind of haha it's just a boring show takedown to have any effect. Like this is just what Star Trek is, and it's amazingly dumb and incredibly fun, and I love it so much. It is one of the most Star Trek episodes of Star Trek I've ever seen.
Yeah. So two things before we back out of this. The B plot where Scotty is in charge of the Enterprise going after this distress signal is the most comedy version of this. Like Scotty plays running the starship like Zap Brannigan. He's just that character. Like they get the distress signal and they go there and it's like, oh, there's nothing here. And then they get another distress signal and Uhura's like, aren't you going to do something? It's like an actual ship. We got the reading on who it is. And he's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And then Chekhov's like, that was invented in Russia. This is the first time apparently that happened because Chekhov is new for season 2. So this is the first time he has attributed something to being Russian, but also that Scotty would like put an entire ship's distress call in like, screw it, we're gonna go back to the planet, is the most cartoon version of a Star Trek captain.
I mean, he's right.
Yes, but also like everything about captains in Star Trek is defined by they always do the proper thing. Like, even if they're violating the rules, even if they like fuck the Prime Directive, we have to do what is good and right. And the times that is violated are like really important to the show. So the minute Scotty's in the chair, he's like, those people can die. We need to go back to the planet.
I don't know. I feel like you're right, but it's clearly a trap.
Yeah, but the way it's played is like the most lackadaisical comedy version of this. And what if he's wrong? Like, they don't know.
It's not. I know. I mean, in any other they couldn't separate the sources section.
That ship can apparently saucer separate, even though they've never shown
Fuck
it.
off.
It is in the lore that ship has saucer separation.
Eat shit.
I'm sorry, it's true.
No, it's not.
Another thing that's interesting, and Memory Alpha mentions that apparently it's brought up in like 2 separate comics. This is literally just Kirk and the Klingons like saying, fuck the Prime Directive, we're gonna go like get ours on this planet of people who don't have technology. Like, McCoy's already been there, like, because he's been there, like, 10 years ago. That's why they know about it. But they just land here and negotiate a trade deal with, like, people who don't even have, like, carts. Like, they just live in tents.
Yep. They haven't even invented bows and arrows yet. They don't know what they are. This will be the same thing as gunpowder, they say.
You know? But we're gonna, like, show up, beam down, and negotiate a trade deal.
It's pretty good.
Like, what is Star Trek in this universe? Like, everything I recognize as the thing I like about Star Trek exists here only as like gestures towards something, and the rest of it is like garbage.
But in the best way. Like,
you know, in the best way. I had a great time, but man, is it dumb.
We are going to talk a lot, especially in the next section with the terrible book, about the difference between good, bad Star Trek and bad, bad Star Trek. This is the purest example of bad Star Trek. There is an episode of Enterprise that I watched recently where it's called A Night in Sickbay, where Archer spends a night in sickbay. It is a hated episode of that show. It is an episode that has been mocked relentlessly. It is one of my favorites. I fucking love it. It is clearly made by people who have watched episodes like this one a million times, that have made a bunch of them, that know exactly how to make bad Star Trek.
Yeah, this is the same thing when I watched Masks, and we talked about how delightful Masks is because it is just dumb.
Masks is definitely. I mean, I think that A Night in Sickbay is actually good.
Yeah, no. A Night in Sickbay is like, I think, actually a pretty good episode. Masks is very much like this in that it is just cartoon action all the time.
Oh, fucking Masks.
I love Masks.
I know you do.
That jar is not to Riker's taste.
We have to stop talking about Star Trek for a bit so we can talk about more Star Trek.
All right, we're going to take a break. If you've not finished DS9, of course, punch out now. Come back next month. We are going to, talk about Journey to Babel and Sarek. You know where to find those, Netflix, whatever. It'll be a good time. And come back after the break to talk about the worst Star Trek book we have read for this podcast. This month is This Gray Spirit, the second in the Mission Gamma series. This was written by Heather Jarman. It was released 7th of October 2002. This book takes place in the year 2376. Jackson, where are we in the universe?
Where we are in the universe is we are about 5 or so months after
6
the end,
months.
6. Okay, I was about to say 6, but I don't know if that overshot. 6 months after the end of DS9. Bajor is about to enter the Federation. The last book ended with the Federation confirming that the probation period is about to happen, and they are about to be formally inducted into the Federation. The Defiant has set off on the first official mission into the Gamma Quadrant. The crew of the DS9 is split between these two places. On DS9, we have Kira in command. We have Ro Laren as the security officer. We have Quark as ever. We have we have Tyranitar, who is a Gem Hadar sent by Odo to learn about life in the Alpha Quadrant. Is that it on
Trier.
DS9? We have Treya, who is a Dabo girl that works with Quark, that is basically playing Quark, and we have
partner. We have Gul Macet.
We have Gul Macet, who is identical to Gul Dukat because he was a character also played by the same guy, who is now the leader of the Cardassians and the captain of the Cardassian vessel Triga. There are more things, but they'll become more relevant in this book. On the Defiant.
No, wait. There is one character that exists on Bajor that I think is important.
Yes. Cassidy Yates is on Bajor. She is very pregnant. And the birth of her child, the emissary's child, is a key plot point that has been ongoing that we assume will be wrapped up in 4 books' time.
On our way to the Gamma Quadrant, in the wormhole, Jake Sisko still.
Jake Sisko went into the wormhole at the end of Avatar Book 1.
He is still there. As much as you can be anywhere when you're not in linear time anymore.
You can tell the good books from the bad books, because the good books, all the characters act like Jake is clearly in the wormhole and everyone kind of knows it deep down, and the bad books of everyone panicking about where the hell is Jake.
I also forgot. On DS9 are 4 Andorians, one of whom is one of the Federation counselors, one of the top politicians, and 3 bondmates of Shar, who is on the Defiant. They are hanging around, waiting for their boyfriend to get back so they can all go have babies on Andor.
On the Defiant, we have Commander Elias Vaughn, Big Boss himself, over 100 years old, Starfleet commander, has seen it all and done it all, and has decided to give up this life of being a loyal Starfleet soldier. I mean, he's still a loyal Starfleet officer, and go on a mission of exploration. And he did this because of an orb experience he had while on the Enterprise traveling to DS9. And realized that DS9 was where he was meant to be, and he is leading the expedition to the Gamma Quadrant. He is
one of the orbs of Bajor, to be specific, in case someone's like, "What's an orb experience?"
We told people who haven't watched DS9 to tap out.
That's true.
What's an orb experience is one of the I'm low on the list of questions I'm worried about people asking.
Fair enough. Who's on the ship, Jackson?
He is joined by First Officer Ezri Dax, who, since the events of DS9, has gone down the command path and is beginning to get used to or explore what being a joined trill means. We have Dr. Julian Bashir. He's Bashir.
They're in a doomed relationship that is still going, even though we predicted it would end ages ago.
Still going. What if it doesn't end?
The inertia of the finale of DS9 is real.
It's been 6 months. It should have ended already.
They keep finding excuses for things to happen to them that draw them closer together. Though, not in this book.
God. We have Ensign Nog. He's Nog. Bashir Nog, basically.
He is the chief engineer of the Defiant.
Yes,
thank you very
chief
much.
He wasn't chief. Oh, right, because Miles was chief engineer, and then Nog replaced him. He was just right.
Yep.
So Nog is now chief engineer of DS9, and he is in absence on the Defiant. We also have Shah, who is an Andorian officer who has tensions with the ways of life on Andor, and so left his bondmates to become a Starfleet officer and is resisting going back home. Previous books dealt with his refusal to go back home and his bondmates trying to bring him home, and it's an ongoing plot. He is currently vaguely promised to go back after he finishes this mission, but in the kind of way of I'll do that after this, so everyone's a bit no one feels very satisfied. Is that it? Do we have anyone else? We
No,
have
you have
Ensign
one more
Prin
person, yeah.
Temme,
Yeah, good job.
who is Vaughn's daughter. The last book was all about, or was partially about, their relationship. They used to hate each other before going to the Defiant Quadrant, before going to the Gamma Quadrant, but they've mostly patched things up. Prin Temme is just an ensign who is very good. She's a pilot. She's very good at being a pilot. That is, I think, the state of things.
So that's where we're at in this universe. What is happening now is the Defiant is just tooling along, going through this area, and suddenly they are attacked, and they're not sure by what. The damage is extreme, and it's from this, like, sensor web of, like, a bunch of nanobots that just fuck anything up that gets in the web, and they are being laid by the Cheka, who are this hostile alien race that are using them to basically create, like, an embargo on this planet. I don't remember the name of the planet, but the people who live on it are the Eurythni?
I've
They
been
are
saying Eurythni.
Yeah, Eurythni. They are aquatic lizard type people, and they show up and help the Defiant. That's just like really fucked up because you cannot open a Star Trek book without the Defiant getting fucked up, apparently.
It's not allowed.
It's too good. You have to ruin it every time. Like, come to our planet, you know, we'll fix it, we'll figure it out. And they get there, and everything is, like, already kind of suspect because they keep telling them things, and then, like, the things they tell them aren't actually true, or they go back on their promises, and it's weird. The Eurythny situation is that they want the help of the Defiant, and what do the Eurythny want that, like, lead them to take them to the trade place? Do you remember?
They don't really. They just want them to help.
Because there's this point where they're like, "Oh, we offered to help, but you guys don't have any money, and it's weird. Like, what do we do? We can take you to the trade place to get the supplies, but we don't have them." But I feel like they wanted something, and Vaughn wouldn't give it to them. But I don't.
Well, the trade place wants the cloaking device.
I know what they want. So, the Eurythni are in this weird situation where they have a caste system of the Houseborn and the Wanderers, and like. They make eggs, and then the eggs, like, hatch, and the babies go out in the water of the oceans, and then they come back to their houses. But some of the babies are carried on the tides and go into other houses where they're taken and become wanderers. They are, like, the servant class. And there's a lot of question of the planet's in this weird state of friction where the wanderers are upset because they don't have full rights, even though they have some representation in government and are kept down as, like, a lower class. And they want the ability to, like, serve in the army and have babies because they're all, like, forcefully sterilized, and it's really shitty. And they decide that the Defiant came as like a religious sign that they have an ability that they can mediate the discussion and find a way out of their predicament and their social tension. And they think the person to do that is one Ezri Dax. And they're like, "We need Dax. You need to give us Dax so she can mediate this." And Vaughn's like, "Well, you're helping us, and we need to go to like the trade station in this sector to get the supplies we need to defeat the sensor grid that's killing us. So we'll leave her here with like Shar to keep her company, and we're gonna go and negotiate this trade deal." So they do that. Ezri and Shar spend their time ingratiating themselves to the people of the planet. Ezri hangs out with all of the Houseborn and gets shown, like, she basically goes like jet skiing and hangs out in like beautiful palaces and has a great time. Meanwhile, Shar is being dragged to like underground uprising movements and seeing the plight of the people and visiting invalid homes. And it's a lot. We'll get to it. Anyway, Ezri's like, maybe everyone who's wanderer should just go to space. That's my solution. And Shar's like, maybe we should stop being space racist and I can prove it with eugenics. And that's a solution, apparently. And meanwhile, the Defiant goes to this trade station. They put in their bid and it's rejected, but it turns out that it was actually accepted. But the Cheka, who are the people who are brigading the Eurythny planet because they want their babies to like reverse engineer them because their biology is special.
Well, the turnkey, you see.
Yes, they have something called a genetic turnkey that would allow any race that has enough bioengineering talent to maybe use it to like rapidly breed citizens, like people. And Shar's like, maybe this is actually helpful for the Andorians. Maybe I could use this information for my own gain. Anyway, the Cheka want these babies to like make soldiers basically, and they're not giving them babies. Anyway, they have the deal and Vaughn goes to meet them, and they're like this horrible spider person thing, or one of the Cheka is, and they're not going to give it. And there's this dumb plot that involves Prin Tenmei like posing for an artist, and Nog being a fake trader who's going to give them a cloak because what they want is a cloaking device schematic because that's rare technology. And like, we can't give them that because that's from the Romulans. Anyway, they hatch a plan, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. They get their stuff. I don't remember how. I literally just don't remember how. And they come back in time for bullshit happening where like one of the leaders of government is actually working with the militarized uprising that is going to steal babies from the houseborn and give them to the Cheka to get weapons to like fight an uprising, like create an armed resistance underground on the planet. And Ezri's trying to talk them out of it because Ezri needs to do that. And the Defiant shows up just in time to save everyone who needs saving. And the day is saved because Char has decided, actually, your planet isn't like this, and we can use genetic engineering to prove racism is bad. And they do, I guess. Meanwhile...
there's one important plot point that we need still in the Defiant half, because the Defiant half is pointless. Nothing happens. Nothing fucking happens.
Okay.
There's one crucial plot point, which is that Shah has been given the Star Trek plot of vaguely falling kind of in love with the resistance leader, but not really. And
Karen.
No, Karen.
Karen.
Lara Croft. Falls in love with her, but not really, because her boyfriend is actually the one who's committing all the evil crimes. Anyway, the point is, through the experience, through learning about the potential for Andor, through the like dreams he has as he explores what his feelings are, he realizes that after this mission is done, he truly does need to go back to Andor. He misses his bond mates so much, he misses Thriss so much, that he sends a letter back home and he lets them know that truly they are meant to be together and it will happen for real.
Also, Karen gives him a sack of dead babies.
And then Karen literally gives him a sack of dead babies. We're not exaggerating.
So the plot of the bad guy, whatever, I don't even remember his name. Anyway, it's to steal the eggs to give to the Cheka. The problem is the eggs in transit all died, and they don't have any use for them on Eurynthe because they're just dead babies. So she's like, maybe this will help your research. I'm going to give you these dead babies. And so Shar just has a bunch of dead babies. Like, they're probably giant tadpole eggs, so they're not like actually dead babies, but they're also just a bag of dead babies.
Because I that happened to me, and I was so numb by how terrible this book is that I was it didn't even register to me that she had basically said, "Oh, go home to your own love. Here are these dead babies to send you on your way."
Literally what happened in this God.
Anyway,
meanwhile on DS9. Quark and Ro are sad about the Federation coming in and ruining capitalism still, always, forever. Nothing actually advances on that plot front, really.
You started talking about all the stuff I cared about, and then I was like getting angry about how this book ruins everything again as just hearing it.
The Cardassian delegation led by Gul Macet and Natima Lang, who is the ambassador who... She fell in love with Garrick, right? In the original series, in the show?
No, she's with... That's Tial. She's with she's had a thing with Quark.
Oh, right. Quark. Right. No, yeah, you're right. Sorry. I don't remember late DS9 very well.
You're going to get there soon. You're going to rewatch it eventually.
Yes. So, anyway, Natima Lang, who is with Quark, they show up as part of the delegation to, like, get supplies from Bajor, because Bajor is supposedly spearheading the reconstruction effort on Cardassia as like a goodwill gesture. But the talks are really bad. They're not going great. And Lang has this plan to help bridge the gap. And to do that, she brought with her all of the artwork of the late Tora Zial, who is Gul Dukat's half Bajoran daughter, who was killed in the course of DS9. And they're going to display that artwork on DS9 as a gift to the Bajoran people to demonstrate the future that they can forge together. And everyone's very moved by it, except for the people in charge of the Bajoran delegation who are like, oh, I don't know. And like weird things are happening. Like there's a Cardassian flag that's like pinned to a chair, like burnt up with a knife in the conference room.
Kira walks into the conference room, and on the like chair at the top of the table, the Cardassian flag has been draped over the chair, and a knife has been stabbed through it with like a Bajoran word for kill on it or something stupid. And it's very clear that someone is trying to stir up old tensions. Who could be doing this? What could be the plan?
So she's like trying to figure out if Masset is like actually shady or not. Like Tyranitar's cloaked and looking for him, or like following him, and there's like this huge fight between the Bajorans and the Cardassians on the station that like turns into basically a riot that they break up, and that's when Kira is like, maybe Masset's solid, because he seems to actually be mad that the Cardassians got in this fight in the first place. And they have this meeting in this art gallery of this art that Zial had made, and he's like, we've been stymied by the Bajoran delegation at this conference. They're not actually helping us. They say a lot and then they pull out, and they won't commit to the aid we need. And she's like, I'll see what happens. And so she goes to investigate. Meanwhile, all of that artwork gets attacked by like vandalism that is like, clearly someone from Bajor doesn't like this art, blah blah blah. And it's a sad moment for culture, and a sad moment to see Zial as a character degraded in this fucking terrible book. Anyway, she's like, maybe it's this lady who's like fake Kira, who's like leading the delegation. It's like, oh, she's just like you, Kira, but she's like tough and strong-armed, these Cardassians. And she's like, she goes to meet her, and she's like, no, it's not me. Maybe you should go talk to Shakar, who's like the leader of the Bajorans. We've met him in the prior books. And she runs into Shakar, and Shakar, presented with the evidence, is like, yes, no, I don't want to help the Cardassians. It'd be easier just wait until we're in the Federation and let that happen. She's like, by then, millions of Cardassians will probably die because they need our aid. And he's like, that's not my problem. That's their problem. Maybe they shouldn't have invaded us.
Well, it's not even that. It's like, it's less about the concrete reality of what's happening. It's more like, oh, once it becomes a Federation problem, then like there is no closure to the Bajor Cardassia situation. We need to deal with this on our terms, is Kira's argument. And Shakar's like, no, that's a waste of resources. That's dumb. Why? We just need to forget about it and let it become a thing.
Yeah, and that's Shakar is revealed to be like, oh, I don't want to help the Cardassians, and Kira clearly is like, I'm going to help Gul Macet. I'm going to try to get this done, and I'm going to team up with this fake Kira, whose name, sadly, I did not.
Asaram Wadeen.
Okay, thank you. She's just another like tough resistance lady turned politician like Kira. It says she's black, right? Like that's the difference.
I think so.
Yeah. And I'm really, as much as I hate this book, I'm really glad they did not play this is like Kira, but like a tough black lady as like the actual evil person that they had initially intended, though the fact that they even tease it sucks. Yep. Anyway, two more things before we're done. One. Meanwhile, the part that actually probably isn't like the part that you might have forgotten, but is in the memory alpha description, and I had forgotten until I read it. Vedek Yevir, that asshole who had like attained Kira and was in the Avatar books and blah blah blah, meets Cassidy Yates while Kira is visiting her, and there he sees a Bahala figurine that Cassidy Yates was displaying, and has like this religious moment. He's like, "Oh, this is exactly what I came to sought. I have an awakening. I know what I can do," and asks for the figure. And Cassidy Yates is like, "Yeah, sure, I don't want this shit. Get out of here," and he leaves with it, probably to menace a future book.
He doesn't say what it is he figured out.
Yeah, no, it's very nebulous, and I assume from past experiences it might be bad, but who knows? Maybe he won't be bad. I don't know.
I've read the blurb of the next book. We'll get right into it, I'm sure.
Okay. Last thing.
Meanwhile, there's a new person on the station.
Wait,
yeah, that's
what?
part of this plot as well. You forgot about her. You forgot about whatever her name is.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Jackson.
What's her name? The new therapist, the new counselor.
Oh God, right? Yes, there is a new therapist on the ship. Do you have her name?
Fucking no. It's definitely it's not Harriet, but it's definitely a name that can be abbreviated to a boy's name.
Philippa Matthias.
Right, because everyone calls her Philip, and I hate it.
Yes. She's human, right? And she's married to a Bajoran.
Yes, she is human, married to a Bajoran.
Yes, and she is the new counselor on the station. She is dealing with Thriss, who is one of Char's bonding pair. The way the Andorians work is there's like 4 genders, and all 4 genders have to come together to form Captain Planet. Oh, sorry, Andorian babies.
Yes.
And because that's 4 people in a relationship is like high drama and a mess, there aren't very many Andorian babies. Actually, it's implied that like the baby, it's just hard to conceive generally, but also you have to form a bonding pair with 3 other people. So that doesn't make things easier.
There's been genetic problems, and this book, which maybe this is a thing in places where the Andorians have appeared before, but this book starts making the bonding stuff like have physical ramifications. It's not just a relationship with 4 people. Thriss, it is revealed that Thriss and Shar basically had sex together, which is not a thing you're meant to do when you're meant to all 4 of you get together and do that. But
yeah, the implication is like it created like almost like an imprint on both of them that like changed their like physiological makeup to where like because Thriss hasn't had babies yet, but she's hooked up, she's like actually like physically breaking down and like depressed and
horny is driving her insane.
I assumed it was more that she had not like she hasn't had babies yet. Like it like sent her into baby making mode before, but she has no babies.
Okay, I feel like it depends. The same thing. It depends which nuance to being stupid and sexist and dumb towards mental health you want to take, but the result is identical.
Meanwhile, Shar is apparently fine. I don't know. Well, the thing that's stated is that of the like weird gender stuff with the Andorians, Thriss was going to be the one that carries any babies that are created, right? Like that's the reason that this is affecting her and not everyone else.
Well, she's the one that will like give birth. All of them like the baby goes through all of them at a point, but she is the one that finishes the 4x100
Wait,
relay.
does it? Is that true?
Yes,
Is that what it says? Okay. How does that work?
I don't know, but like,
I thought it just needed all 4 to like conceive. I just assumed.
There's a line where like Anishet is talking about how it'll be like that is a baby that will pass through me, but she will conceive it and like give it to, or like give birth to it, and that is a greater privilege, and she doesn't seem to understand this privilege she has.
So anyway, she's very depressed, and she starts a fight in Quark's bar. Like she stabs one of the other bond mates. It's a mess, and Philippa is there to like try to talk her down. Shar's letter arrives with Vaughn's communication, because the thing is, it's like tucked into Vaughn's like report back to Kira of what's going on. The problem is the report Vaughn sent to Kira is like highly classified, so it has to be read by Kira, detangled and like from that and given to them because it's like at a high security clearance. And Kira is dealing with the plot of like, oh, the Cardassians and the Bajorans are about to like actually start a riot on the station, so she doesn't see it, and so they don't get it. And by the time the Defiant plot wraps up and Shar's like, I need to go back, I'm just going to go back to the station and say I'm ready to make babies, Thriss has killed herself in despair. And this happens in the final 20 pages of the book where like everything is settled, and then the epilogue happens and Shar is back and everyone's like, I'm sorry, Shar. We tried to help her, but she's already dead. And it's the fucking worst. Like, not only do they kill a character because she's too depressed that she's not pregnant, they do it in between a like chapter break. It's meant to be like this. I'm convinced that the intent is it is a tragic reveal of these 2 characters who have been separated and discover, like Shar discovered the truth of himself, but through the tragedy of circumstance, it gets to her too late, and it is just meant to tear your heart out as you thought everything was okay, like that kind of device. But it's too kind of like clumsily done for that even to come across. So it just feels like they forgot to write the chapter where she had any thoughts about it. Yep.
There's only one section of the book where we actually get into Thriss's point of view. It's almost all like the therapist talking to someone else, explaining how Thriss feels, or what's her name, Charavethra, or her, like, who is essentially Shar's mother, or like Javeh, but she's Shar's mother. That's how they deal with it.
Shar's parent. I always go with parent.
Parent's the right word, but I don't know. I feel like I don't need when the book and the universe of Star Trek.
I would like to treat this issue with more delicacy than these fucking books do.
Sure, I feel like I want to represent how much they don't even try to care about the four genders thing.
I want to be better than that.
You're right. Anyway, so Char's parent is explaining everything and the delicacy of the situation, and basically saying, okay, we need this dealt with. We can't let anyone know about this because I am of status, and this has to be kept under hush, and we can't have this affecting this, and is like asking very difficult things of Ro as a security risk. And so it's all done through other people's perspective, and then she just dies because she's too sad that she can't have babies.
The weird thing is, I feel like the one chapter that's from her point of view doesn't depict her as that despairing.
No, it isn't, because it's when she's in a good place.
But, like, I feel like it implies that she's, like, she recognizes that she's unstable, but, like, these people just don't understand that that's how she's dealing with a difficult situation, and she'll be fine as long as they fucking leave her alone.
It's that, and it's also that, like, she knows in her heart that Shah will come back. It's fine. She knows that will be a true thing. And the implication is that not receiving the letter in time broke her, and thus she died and killed herself.
But the letter wasn't even like a normally scheduled, like he's like, I wrote it special extra this time. Like it wasn't even like a scheduled letter that was missed or something.
Yeah, it's a really bad book. This is a really bad book.
Yes, no, that we can agree upon. It is bad.
So, let's talk about the fucking fish people. Let's just...
So, let's pause it in all of the world of space and the allegories it represents. Let me ask you a question, Jackson.
Yes.
Is racism bad?
I don't know. What does science say?
What if we could prove that there's a genetic difference between one race and another? Does that make them different and separate enough that all of the prejudices are justified?
Who can say? There are many sides to it. I think we should consider all sides before.
Ezri Dax and Shar, if you ask them in the course of this book, if their genetic testing proved that the Houseborn and the Wanderers were actually different and the Wanderers were genetically inferior to the Houseborn, it would be fine. If the Federation is like, yes, your racism is good and valid, and they flew off into the stars, leaving this planet to fucking suffer under this awful caste system. That is what this book posits as, like, the thing the Federation would do.
Hate it so much.
The Federation ruins, like, functionally good planets because they disagree with their form of government.
It is all talk about, like, the Prime Directive. And the Prime Directive, okay, the Prime Directive only applies to species who are not spacefaring. It is like, yes. It isn't about the Federation don't want to spread their worldview. They do. They always do. That's what Star Trek is. There's like what the scene in Quark's Bar where they talk about
Root beer.
Root beer is. They're like, that's what they do. That is the Federation. It's not to do with them not wanting to influence things. It's to do with like not wanting to push species that have not organically reached space into the intergalactic community. It is a different issue. They totally would just say no to this.
Yeah.
Notable eugenics fans, the Federation.
Yeah, no. The people that won't even, like, use genetic engineering to fix, like, problems that people can have, like, they're blind and stuff, because once upon a time, a bunch of genetically engineered superhumans took over Earth. And now there's, like, a big, giant taboo around genetic engineering, thinks that if there's a genetic predisposition to justify the racism on this planet of fish people, it's fine, don't worry about it. We're just gonna go. You guys do you.
I think I did a tweet that was like, this book asks, what if phrenology was real, but only real enough to prove that it was dumb? Like, Jesus. The thing that's kind of amazing about this book, and the reason we haven't done the usual beat-by-beat summary, because nothing happens. It is.
I didn't take notes because there was nothing to like. The notes would have involved the part that the Defiant crew is passing around a fucking, like, is it Vulcan or Klingon? It's Klingon, right? A
Yes,
Klingon,
Klingon
like,
book.
bodice ripper, like, sex book.
Yes. That Bashir ends up with.
Yes. After Vaughn had read it.
The Defiant crew play poker, and it's shit.
Yep. Yes, that is true.
But the actual plot is like, it's honestly impressive how little forward movement in plot happenings there are. People just kind of move from place to place. No characters make decisions. No things happen.
It takes 350 pages for Ezri Dax to say, what if the Wanderers just moved off planet and formed a colony somewhere? And that's the plan they're going to go with until Shar is like, maybe racism is bad.
The thing that is masterful about this book, the thing that makes it, elevates it to a stage that I have very rarely seen from Star Trek, is that it is not just a bad Star Trek episode. It is every bad Star Trek episode.
Yep, it is aliens as an allegory for like social issues on Earth, but handled really poorly and ham-fistedly. It is writer is clearly too into their own alien race that they created to actually care about the parts of Star Trek that matter, which are the recurring characters.
It is bad alien gender metaphors.
Yes, bad alien gender metaphors, bad alien race metaphors, terrible space mental health issues.
Yes, incredibly indelicately dealt with mental health issues. Incredibly broad diplomacy that has no real basis in any actual characters. Super dumb morality that is like, oh, justice is more important than vengeance, like 101 style, be the better person bullshit that DS9 especially had got past at this point. This is like early TNG stuff that DS9 had, like, DS9 it begins and ends in violent revolution.
Yeah.
Like, it is past that kind of like level of morality issues, and suddenly, bam, here it is.
Also, despite the fact that it's clear that like the de facto as like the plot is written in Star Trek, if you want to make Bajorans villains, they have to be part of they have to be like a wayward Vedic. That's how it works. But instead, the actual Bajoran government are ready to fuck over Cardassia because you need a villain that is not another Vedic because they're off being villains in a different, weirder way.
It's a shame because the tension between Cardassia and Bajor is like it's central to DS9, and it's things that I would love to see explored really well in these books. And not only is it bad in this book, but it lays groundwork that I think is going to suck in the future. Like, it does things to Kira's character that I like.
I don't know. I think Kira makes it out of this book, outside of Vaughn, the most unscathed.
But the way it plays her, like, I am glad in the broad strokes that she is basically working with Masset to try to form a peace. But the way in which it's like, she has like a line that basically is like, "Oh, I would not pick up the whip." It's like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yep. No, like. Because this book is all about its dumb, like, race metaphors, it turns the occupation of Bajor by the Cardassians into, like, a slavery metaphor, which it never was.
No.
It's, like, it's either a, like, Holocaust, like, Nazi Jewish people allegory, or if you're, like, a more modern writer, it is, like, a Israel-Palestine allegory. But it's only one of those.
Yes. It is, like, a specific state occupation metaphor. And obviously, because we talked about this last time, like the tensions of inherent to this kind of sci-fi when you bring in a metaphor for real world issues that especially are like grave shit, it's always going to be kind of weird. This pushes it to like the worst version of that. In every opportunity where it can be terrible, it takes it.
Yes. It's rough.
Do you remember like a month ago when Vaughn like had the realization inside of a sentient being in another universe that his entire life had the wrong approach, and he needs to let go and he needs to love his daughter, and it was the most beautiful thing that had ever happened in a book in Star Trek?
Yeah, no, I know. Remember when we went to a planet that was just like octopus people who communicated through their skin color on this beautiful like ocean-lined planet, and then a moon exploded and they fixed it all in a chapter, and that was just like a world they visited, and we weren't mired in dumbass caste politics for 300 pages.
Oh my god. Remember Star Trek?
Star Trek used to be good, and now I don't know anymore.
Remember last book when we were so excited about Kira and Ro getting together as like these two characters who don't really belong anywhere and have this deep sadness?
You mean Nog and Ro?
Shit.
I mean, I'm not going to blink at Kira and Ro getting together, but...
You fucked up. You said Nog and Ro as well. Quark and Ro.
We both missed. That's also weird.
Extremely hoisted. No, Kira and Ro is way higher on the shipping tier than Nog and Ro.
Yes,
Shout out to the one person on Twitter who's like a Nog and Ro shipper.
Oh, God, that poor soul.
Poor soul. God, I don't approve of it. I don't approve. But no, like a Quark and Rose relationship was founded in this like sadness of not knowing where to belong in this changing world that is going in a direction that they don't agree with. All of that's gone. just fucking wiped off the face of the earth. Luckily, there's no real movement with that stuff, so it's fine.
Yeah, they don't have time to fuck it up. Like, Quark caters a gathering and Kira snaps at him and Quark feels bad. That's literally what happens in these plots.
Like, the worst thing that happens is that Quark gives Ro a long, impassioned speech about why the Federation is bad, and it doesn't actually match up with anything about Quark's character, anything about the Federation, and anything about why he would have issues with the Federation. Because he just gives a long speech that's like, oh, the Federation has a fundamental wrong approach. You can't actually get rid of bad things because bad things will always exist. Like, it's ultimately futile. Bad things will happen, so you must just accept the bad things. You can't try to make the world better. And it's just like a dumb idealism versus pragmatism fight that is stupid and not actually what Quark's about.
Yeah, no. But I mean, this is a book where someone dies because she can't have babies yet.
You're more incensed about that than I am. Like, I think that's
I'm
terrible.
so mad about it. Like, so part of it is I like Enterprise, the show. And
Yes.
one of the reasons I like it a lot is because it introduces Andor and Andorians in a way that, like, they've always been like a central part of the lore of Star Trek, but they weren't in Star Trek before that because they're too hard to do the makeup of reliably on a TV budget. And I think Andorians are like fascinating because they're basically like what the Klingons became when they decided they wanted more Klingons in TNG, but as like a Federation founding member. Like, it's really neat and interesting. And I was so glad these books were going to be like, we're going to get into the Andorians and what their deal is. And for it to be this fucking garbage drama, it makes me so mad. They took these characters that, like, the whole point of them going through this, like, drama of, oh, he's gone away, is for him to come back and them to be like a family and have these babies. And then him to go out and as a dad on adventures. And instead that can't happen because they fucking killed her off because they needed the drama in this book now.
I was just assuming that he would eventually this would happen and then we would have Dad Shah. Like, that was like the most obvious thing. Clearly that's where this goes.
So now we have like a fucking dead woman to motivate Shar into being mopey for probably another 3 fucking books. Like, all versions of this suck.
Yeah, like, the reason, like, I think it's fucking one of the worst things that happens in the book on a book sense, but it doesn't mess up Star Trek lore in the way that I was worried about with, like, I love Quark and Ro as characters. If anyone fucks them up, I'm gonna be mad. But Shah's, like, as a book only character, I haven't, like, become that attached yet. Also, this book came out, like, at the end of Enterprise Season 1.
Oh, yeah, you're right, I guess. But, like, we're not reading it that way, so I'm going to get mad about this.
No, I'm not saying your madness is wrong. Madness is the wrong one, but I'm not saying it's wrong to be mad.
Madness is correct.
Yes. But it is very clear that they don't have the groundwork of, like, there have been a bunch of episodes done about this thing to work on with Andor at this point. This author comes back to write the World of Andor DS9 book. There's a bunch of, like, species-only DS9 books
Oh, no, Jackson. I was looking forward to those. I hadn't made that connection yet.
You didn't know that yet? Sorry.
You've crushed my dreams. You got to hear me say it. My dreams were crushed on cast. You got a recording of me being sad.
You could actually pinpoint the moment where their heart breaks. Oh, did you genuinely? That was just
yeah. No, I genuinely didn't know that, and I'm genuinely upset about it.
Because after this first series, it like
so
goes into...
this at the end of this book, where I was just fucking aghast that nothing had happened, and then when things did happen, they were all shitty. There's the fucking author plate that is like it's like Heather. This is Heather Jarman's first published work. She hopes to return to the universe of Star Trek soon, and I have never fucking been threatened as much by a book as I was by that author plate.
It's a really bad book. I hope Heather doesn't listen to this, because I don't actually want to be mean to Heather. But I just
Heather, your book fucking sucks. I hope you got better, because this sucks.
I mean, if we enjoy the next one more, I'll be so happy to see it be better. I would like that so much.
And I know it's like especially poignant because we just came off of a really like moving and incredible book, but god damn it, I'm so mad.
Yep.
So, couple things that we didn't really cover that are worth talking about. Ezri is apparently like super confused about all her lives and keeps referring to herself as like Curzon and Jadzia and stuff.
Oh, I hate it.
It sucks. And Bashir's doing the thing where Bashir's like concern trolling her about everything because that's just Bashir being shitty. But in this instance, because they've did this, now they've made Bashir right.
Yeah, no, like the arc of the book has basically the arc of all these books has been, depending on how well it's handled. Like last book it was really good because Bashir's fears like came from like a real place within him. But now we're back to Bashir going, "Oh, you can't be all these many people. You have to be Ezri because Ezri's that's the person I want to fuck." And then Ezri basically goes off and goes, "No, I must be Dax. I must do all these things." And then tries to, and then fucks up, and then remembers she is actually a mastered super counselor, and then saves the day. And then she comes back and is like, "You were right. I have to be Ezri. I can't be someone who I'm not. I have to be who I am." And then Bashir
Though
gives him a kiss.
the way in which only Ezri Dax is equipped to save the day, not Curzon, who was a consummate politician, is that she does like hostage negotiation 101 with the guy who has them at gunpoint. It's like I could manage to talk that guy down.
Especially as like it's not like you're talking down someone who has got a cause that they really believe in, that they have to see it through on like a moral level.
No, this is like a sweaty Coens Brothers protagonist who just got caught on a really bad day
with his girlfriend who also wants him not to be doing the thing, like 4 centimeters away from him, crying.
It's bad.
It's so bad.
Couple things that aren't the worst that I'm like, this is fine. There's a really ridiculous scene of Kira and Gul Macet in the Zial museum where they're sitting on
it's not just the Zial museum, it's Garrick's shop, right?
Yes, it's Garrett's shop converted into the Zial museum, but they're sitting on this bench like just a flat bench with no back, and Macet is sitting on one side and Kira's sitting opposite him, like facing the other way. And they're having this conversation quietly about how they're going to start like working together, and surrounded by this artwork of Bajor Cardassian fusion art. And it's dumb in every symbolism way. It's Superman sitting in front of the Jesus window in Man of Steel, but
Did you like this?
Kind of amazing. I didn't think Star Trek could have like, I like Star Trek, and it does a lot of like allegory with characters and plots, but Star Trek's not a show that I think of as like having visual symbolism, and it's dumb, but I was delighted by how dumb it was.
The part that tragically we have to mention is it's actually not them sitting in the gallery, it's them sitting in the burnt out, attacked wreck of the gallery.
No, it's before it's burnt out.
Is it?
Yes, it's in the like very early opening when it's just a few people can come in.
Hang on, I'm sneezing. All right. Okay, I didn't know that. I because nothing happens in this book, it's really hard to place when anything does happen.
Yes, no, I know. Another thing I like is the Defiant is taken to this like trading consortium to like get the materials they need to beat this fucking sensor web or whatever, and they go there and they're like you're in three, you're like, you don't have a ton to offer, what if you offered your cloaking device? And Vaughn's like, no, we're gonna offer maps. We've got maps. And I like the idea that the Federation shows up and all they have to offer, like a commerce focused culture, is just information. We've got maps. And you're like, that would never work. And it doesn't, but not because they didn't accept it. They totally did. It was just plot happened that like made it not work.
It was like, cause we were talking about that Quark scene and that monologue that he gives about idealism versus pragmatism being dumb, when the actual criticism he would have is the fucking Federation show up to a trade outpost and they desperately need to do something, and their best idea is to bring maps, and that is why the Federation is like a fundamentally flawed idea, and that's what Quark sees of them, and it's right there in the book, and the book doesn't realize it.
Yep.
Then like Prin's whole scene where she like has to fit a USB pen into a computer in order to make
while like being painted by a weird gross alien while she's topless.
Yeah, it's like
and not being like not having a portrait painted of her, being painted on.
Yep, it's very dumb, but in a mostly good way. I think I said to you that when one of the worst scenes in Heavy Rain is one of the better scenes in your book, you know, you've strayed from the path.
This book was really bad, but we're done, I think, unless you have something else.
I think we are free. I think we are going to move on to the next book.
I will say I am thanking all the Bajoran gods that there was not more Tyranitar in this book, because she would have found a way to fuck him up too.
Oh, because yes, we talk about Tyranitar a lot and how we love him, and we haven't mentioned him once in the plotline, except that he's like shadowing Maset to make sure that Maset's not up to anything weird. And he is, but that is only revealed by him not being mentioned once for the entire book until 300 pages in, where he suddenly decloaks and Kira goes, "You've been following him?" And he goes, "Yes." And that's the end of the scene.
Yep.
Not appearing in this book, Tyranitar.
That's it. The best part about Tyranitar is he could not be appearing because he is invisible.
Thank you. It's true.
That's it. We're gonna cut to the last. You know what? We don't have a musical break for that. We're just gonna talk about the last bit, but we're done. Fucking end this book. Apparently, it was very heavily influenced by September 11th, which means it's stupid in the way everything influenced by September 11th.
We are deep in like immediately post 9/11 stuff. Like everything that is coming out now is stuff that would have been like conceived around immediately after 9/11.
It's gonna ruin everything.
I know. We're gonna see it happen in real time. I can't believe that Enterprise at this time was good.
Okay. Jackson, we ask for questions and comments and stuff.
Oh shit, we have questions.
If people want to send us questions, where do they do that?
They go to podcast@abnormalmapping.com. Put Star Trek in we'll know if it's a Star Trek question.
Yeah, they don't have to do that. We don't get enough email for that. We have 3 questions today. The first question is from Arcane Crystal. Jackson, the question is, what do they mean by Ferengi being so well acquainted with wetness?
So there's a passage in this book that I put on Twitter as like of the evidence that just didn't get edited, which I know isn't true because the editor of these DS9 books has like clearly been like been very clear about what the plotting is and has planned all this stuff out and assigned it to authors. But it's just a passage about how Quark hated the wet. Growing up in Ferenginar, he was very well acquainted with wet, but more than wet, he knew that when wet was combined with cold, it became damp. It fucking sucks. It's just a description of thermodynamics for a paragraph. It just means
this is all because Ro takes him surfing, for the record.
Yes, this is all because Ro takes him surfing. It just means Ferenginar's a wet planet. It just looks like the Camino.
No, Ferenginar does not look like Camino. Ferenginar is Dagobah.
Okay. I mean, yes, it's more swampy, but those structures are Camino-esque.
Because they eat, like, tube grubs, and, like, they talk about, like, fungus and stuff. Like, it's a swamp planet. It's not an ocean planet. There's a big difference.
Okay, I'm sorry for being wrong about lore.
No, he does not appear in any of these books. He's probably dead right now.
Shut up.
Lore is still disassembled on Beverly Crusher's, like, dresser drawer.
This is pre-B4. This is the year of B4, 2002.
Oh, that's not lore either, though. Let's be real.
That is not lore.
But sadly, it's canon, so someday we'll have to cover it. Next question. I have to scroll down, sorry.
Okay, I was hoping you didn't expect me to have it, because I don't have it.
From @Personal Corpse, is Star Trek racism allegory any better than X-Men racism allegory?
The good thing about Star Trek racism allegory is that it is a new one every week.
So, yes. For me, the thing about the X-Men racism allegory is, like, the whole thing is like, oh, they hate and fear us because we're different. But in X-Men, they hate and fear you because you can pop claws out and control, like, the weather and shoot laser beams from your eyes. Like, it buys into... Like, if you read that as a racism allegory, it's, like, about super predators, like, in a really gross way.
Yeah, no, the traditional critiques of the X-Men racism allegory stand out. I've always read X-Men as more of a, like, queer allegory, which is also dumb.
Yeah. Sadly, I have been queer forever, and I do not have any mutant powers yet.
Have you tried not having mutant powers? X-Men's... Okay. I haven't read enough X-Men to know for sure. I like X-Men, even though I accept that it's garbage most of the time. Mm-hmm. The metaphor is not the strongest part of X-Men. X-Men is good because I like Cyclops. X-Men is good because the characters are ridiculous. The
thing with Star Trek, though, is Star Trek operates on 2 different levels of race metaphor.
Yes.
So there's the planet you show up to where the racism happens. Yes, and that's almost always kind of ham-fisted. Sometimes it's better than others. This one is particularly bad. The one on, like, Friday's Child was particularly hilarious. But then you have... maybe it's not even like a race metaphor, but then you have the Federation is made up of humans who are like impulsive and creative, and then you have the Vulcans who are like cultured and logical. You have the Klingons who fucking wreck shit and like have this like very boisterous tradition. And those parts of Star Trek were like and you have the Ferengi who are like, we are all about commerce and lasciviousness or whatever. And those parts have their own racial components that can like often can be really problematic. Like there's stuff about, do the Ferengis represent like stereotypes about Jewishness, or do the Klingons represent like black culture? And the answers to those, when you like think too hard about them, can be really icky, and it's worth considering in the ways in which that falls down, in the ways in which sometimes it can be interesting and good. A lot of that has to do with who's writing what episode on any given day, what it's about, and what the actors bring to it. Like the things Michael Dorn and the writers of TNG bring to Worf in that show about Worf being like a black character are really interesting. Mm-hmm. But when TNG or original series actor shows up in brownface to be like a dashing, evil, laughing man, it's bad.
Yes, there are many ways you can go.
The big concern I have with Discovery is not that it is going to be a bad show, because I like bad Star Trek as much as good Star Trek a lot of times. It's about what happens if you're taking this radical new approach to Klingons, when Klingons mean it's like a very charged thing. Are they going to tackle that? Is it going to be handled well? Like that's the stuff I'm actually worried about with Discovery. And so that's the part where the race metaphor in Star Trek can be better. Is it great? Probably not. As always, I wish, like, hire more writers of color to write good things about these worlds, and you will get better stories.
Yep, it is always true. And like Star Trek has the big problem of most Star Trek writers are white dudes. That is has been true. It remains true. It sucks.
Next question from Trippy Jing. If you were an omniscient reality warping being, which Star Trek character would you mess with the most?
Oh, define mess with.
If you're Q, who do you torment? Who is your Picard?
Yes, I understand that's the question, but like the answer is probably like, Q chose well. Like the answer is probably Picard. But if we can't just repeat Q, we have to pick someone else.
Yeah, so let's invalidate Picard. Picard actually probably wouldn't be my answer.
Picard's taken. So who would yours be? And then I'll do mine. I'll think of one.
Oh God. It's so weird. Because I feel like I could have a different answer for every Star Trek, honestly, and I don't know which one would be my favorite among them.
Pick one, and then we've got a little bit of time before we finish. Like, I would 100% mess with Archer. Like
that was actually my first choice as well.
No, like because he's not Picard at all, but he has similar leader-like qualities, and I love him a lot. But he's also a huge idiot in a way Picard isn't, and he doesn't actually know anything about being in space, really.
Yes, but also he's too like he's like early human, like in the way Star Trek thinks about like the way humans have become better in the next 300 years.
Yep.
Where he's going to be really pissed that you're messing with him, and that's funny.
So pissed. Pissy Archer is so funny. Do you remember when he went like 3 months back in his past because he got trapped in the year or whatever it was in the 4,000 years in the future?
You know,
Archer's great.
Yeah. Archer is incredibly high on my list for sure.
Yes, no. Archer was my gut reaction.
My second choice is probably Geordi, because I would actually just want to fix Geordi, because Geordi needs fixing.
Oh, poor Geordi.
Poor Geordi.
Yeah, no, those are the big ones.
I'm glad that you also picked Archer, because I think it's the rightest choice.
It's clearly the right choice.
Yeah.
Because like it's hard to pick someone who isn't a captain, because the reason it's fun to mess with Picard is because he's like in charge of a ship.
Yeah, because you become someone who can undercut the authority figure and get away with it because you're omnipotent. Yeah,
like it's no fun. Like you can't mess with Wesley. Wesley went off to be at fucking. I always forget about the Traveler.
No, Wesley messed with Wesley by going off to be a space lord.
That's what I mean. I always forget that the Traveler happens.
Yep. No.
To Wesley.
Yeah, he was so mad about those space natives and so into his vision quest that he ascended into a higher plane of being.
Mess with Chakotay.
God. Just erase Chakotay's existence. Fucking
by
God.
Mess with.
Someday we are going to get to talk about Voyager, and it's just going to be ceaseless complaining about Chakotay.
It will never cease.
No, Chakotay sucks every day.
Every day. And this podcast, Plug Zone. Let's go.
Jackson, where can people find us on the internet?
In my tragic hubris, I thought that I had done that such that I would throw to you.
No, but you always do the plugs.
I know. I am at Headfuls Off on Twitter. You can find our podcasts, our other shows at abnormalmapping.com. We have Abnormal Mapping. It is a video game podcast that is at thebestgame.club. They've all got their own domains. I have the Amory Score, which I do with Molly. That is a tour through the beautiful lore of Coheed and Cambria. It's so stupid. If you thought this book was stupid, you know what this book needs? This book needed mayo.
We can't talk about mayo here. It's illegal.
It's illegal. That is at ineedmayo.com. And we are also doing the Great Gundam Project. That is a weekly show where we go through Gundam. It is available through our Patreon for anyone who donates $1 or more to the Patreon, which works out like 25 cents an episode. It's a good deal. Come join us through the Gundam. And yeah, that's it. Those are the plugs.
Where are you on Twitter?
I've already done that. That was the start.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
I didn't hear
That's how
that.
I start.
You can find me on Twitter at EM_being. If you want to support the Patreon, go to patreon.com/abnormalmapping. Any amount helps. There are rewards at $5 and $10 that are past just getting that good old Gundam podcast, but you should check them out. They're also good. Please support, share with your friends. I do Let's Plays on the YouTube channel. You just go to YouTube, type in Abnormal Mapping, you'll get them. I am playing through Gabriel Knight, the 90s adventure game, and a Castlevania game, Chronicles from 2001. So that is it for me. We'll be back next month with the third book in this series, Cathedral. Written by Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangels.
Those are made up names.
They are not.
This has been a day that apparently Andy Mangels is the thing that causes me to break. It's been a day.
Okay.
Is that where we're ending it? Is that really where we're ending this podcast?
No, it probably shouldn't be. So that's going to be the next book. Please look forward to it. Look forward to those episodes. I'm excited to get into Sarek. By the next time we podcast, Discovery will have come out. We will be doing episodes every week of Discovery.
Oh, God.
We will do episode recaps. They'll come out midweek whenever we can get to it. We don't have a firm day yet, but we'll be watching those as fast as possible and getting a podcast out to you. I don't think those are going to be super long, but we'll see. Get ready for Discovery. In the first episode of that Discovery podcast, I will open by talking about how I liked Orville. So that's going to be a fucking shit show.
Oh God, that's going to be how that works, isn't it?
Yep. No, that's it. We're done. Jackson, goodbye. Everyone else, see you out there.